who likes short shorts?
We like short shorts!
So, obviously, we have to do a Stan Lee episode. Comic books, and therefore the last 10 years plus of film, would not be the same without him. Not to say that he was the single creator of Marvel and all of those array of characters. He wasn't. He was the co-creator. He still had an incredible impact, and because of his personality and his appearance throughout Marvel's work as a very on the face of things publisher, he will be remembered first and foremost as kind of the face of the first generation of comic books, and with his passing, I'm not too sure who is left from that generation. But instead of doing the normal top 10 best Stan Lee cameos or anything like that, I'm going to do something a little more personal. And we're going to do the top 5 things in my life that Stan Lee has contributed to that, frankly, I enjoyed and remember. So here we go.
And if you fail, you can always open a comic book store.
You remember the Spider-Man cartoon from the mid-90s? I love that cartoon. It was so simple and straightforward and streamlined. While not the same quality as the X-Men cartoon on Fox from a few years before, it was still decent and structured storytelling that managed to compress decades and decades of plots and contrivances into a couple of simple seasons. And they even managed to do the Clone Saga better than the Clone Saga ever did, and far, far more compact. While the ending kind of spiraled out of control with Madam Web and everything, it was really interesting and fun as a kid to see at the end of all of this, Spider-Man end up meeting Stan Lee. It would have been nice if there was a nod to Jack Kirby in there, but at the same time, well, you know, you get what you pay for, I guess, and it was on basic cable, so that tells you what you want to know.
But I never got any breaks. But now, after all I've been through, for once, I like my life. I like myself. And for the first time ever, I wouldn't want to change anything about me.
And along with that cartoon came the video game, which I played on the Nintendo 64. And so the narration of the video game, which is as broad a game with as many characters as the cartoon show was, it's very streamlined storytelling that manages to just shove everyone in there. The game itself and the tutorial was narrated by Stan Lee, and that was really immersive. To have the editorial voice of this character right there with you as you're going along. It felt very, very immersive and very proper for what you were doing.
Then, of course, non-stop web-slinging, wall-crawling action.
The DC remakes. I know that some people, a lot of people, did not like Stan Lee reimagines the DC comic books, but I found them refreshing at an exact moment when I was doing a lot of learning about myself as a creative writer in high school, and it was and it timed at the exact moment to express the idea that anything can be written about. You can do anything. There are no restrictions. If Stan Lee can write a Batman book, then anything, you know, the only restriction is your imagination. And I actually kind of like the Superman book. It was silly and it was really, really dated, but I felt like that was the intent. It was supposed to be dated. It was supposed to reflect the way comics were when Stan Lee was very, very young and Action Comics first came out. It was a completely different world, a completely different way of explaining, doing dialogue and expressing story and presenting things. And so I felt like it was a welcome throwback. A welcome throwback. Just say that.
Stan Lee insulted me. But in Bizarro World, that means he likes me.
Okay, yeah, so the cameos. You can't go without mentioning the cameos because they are, of course, the most present he has ever been in terms of media. While Stan Lee has always been very present, it's been to a more or less niche market. But now, with the films and a decade of films and appearances, well, actually more than a decade, because of course he's been appearing since X-Men 1. So that's, what, 18 years? 18 years of mass market exposure through cinema has turned him into more of a household name and more of a grander concept kind of character. He's not a person, he's this grand thing. And of course, only comic books, as insane as they are, such as the Marvel books, when you step back and really think about them, would come from a larger-than-life character. That's why this whole thing works. And so, yeah, obviously the cameos. The cameos are amazing. My personal favorite is definitely Guardians of the Galaxy 2, in which is revealed that he is an agent of the Watchers. Just because I really love his line delivery of, oh guys, oh gee, oh boy, gee.
Fellas, hey wait, where are you going? Hey, you were supposed to be my lift home. How'll I get out of here? Hey, gee, I've got so many more stories to tell. Guys, oh gee.
I immediately thought of Morty, and it's like, oh, Stan Lee kind of, in those cameos, kind of is a Morty. He's a Morty to his own universe, a victim of his own creation. I just found that very charming.
Stan Lee came back?
Stan Lee never left. And I'm starting to think that his mind is no longer in mint condition.
So, when I was in high school, I used to watch a lot of Kevin Smith. I mean, I watch a lot of Kevin Smith now just because I watch the Berlanti universe. But I used to watch a lot of Kevin Smith movies. And my favorite for a long time was Mallrats, because of course it spoke to me when I was 14, as it will. And not just because I wanted to be Joey Lauren Adams. It was my kind of humor. It was incredibly entertaining to laugh at a very young Ben Affleck, especially when he was constantly called an asshole. And it was the exact kind of madcap juvenile behavior that was just very entertaining to me. I will not apologize for it. I loved that film. And the very heartfelt moment when Brody meets Stan Lee and gets some excellent advice about his love life and an evasive response about the context of the thing's cock. It was like sharing a more personal moment. Yes, everyone who has ever mall-ratted can relate to this film a little bit as an extreme version of what you would go through. But having that sudden appearance of someone that by now you had internalized as an editorial voice when reading certain things, it was really personal on a level that is almost hard to explain.
I like that sort of thing. Tell me, do you have a girlfriend, Brody?
Had one. We just broke up. The Thing. Is this dork made of orange rock like the rest of his body?
It's a superhero secret.
And finally, in the 80s, Marvel used to have a really keen, tongue-in-cheek sense of humor about itself. It still does, much more than DC does, but it used to have this kind of National Lampoony attitude to making fun of itself. And so this is a bit of a long story. Okay, so this is the first comic book I ever owned. I don't know how it got into this state. It has always been like this, but it was the first one that I am aware of ever owning. I don't know, or I didn't know at the time anyone in it. It stars the Chameleon, who did not appear in the 1960s cartoon, and so I had no idea who he was, and has this really epic ad that I thought was actually a part of the comic when I was 4, because, you know, you're 4 and an idiot. Anyway, so aside from the 60s cartoon, this comic book was kind of my introduction to Marvel, and it's very limiting because, of course, there's much more to it. And so there used to be a flea market, or a junk market, or a kind of just lower quality item market, because it's hard to explain. It was a weird market. Anyway, it was in an emptied out brewery. And a comic book shop, an entire comic book shop set up there. And for years, every Sunday, I would go down to it and peruse the racks of books that there was essentially no age limit for what you could pick up. So like a 7-year-old kid could end up grabbing some Frank Miller and have absolutely no sweet clue. And that's how I was introduced to Martha Washington. But a part of that meant exploring and discovering comic books in a really fun, organic, and kind of lost in the forest way. And so the first full introduction to the Marvel Universe I ever had was Fred Hembeck Destroys the Marvel Universe. Seriously, this book, this ridiculous in-joke, this wonderful, deep, silly thing is how I learned about the Marvel Universe, namely the Marvel Universe of the late 80s. And I had no sweet clue what any of it meant. I recognized Spider-Man, of course, and I had a passing idea about the X-Men, having read random books and, of course, seen the X-Men cartoon show. Although these X-Men looked very different. For the most part, the references went far, far over my head, and I had no sweet clue who the hell this guy was supposed to be. But there, standing at the end, resolving everything, was Stan Lee. Now you have to understand, at this point, I think I was 6. And this is my introduction to Stan Lee, a fictional version of himself, appearing to save the day and the entire Marvel Universe. It's the most Stan Lee thing ever. The same day I bought that, I also bought the Fumetti book, which was an entirely different kind of introduction to Stan Lee. A black and white, cheaply produced photo comic starring the entire staff of Marvel and some really, really cheap-looking spandex. The Fumetti book was one of those wonderful little in-jokes that Marvel decided to share with their audience. And smack dab in the middle of it is Stan Lee, drawn up badly like the Hulk, which was near impossible to tell because of the cheap black and white Xerox look of it. What young me, of course, didn't know is that this was the original photo.
He can't be the Hulk. I'm the Hulk.
Oh, please. You couldn't even change into Bill Bixby.
Come on, damn it. Change. Ah, forget it. I really did it once.
Yes, yes. I just wish you had the power to leave my store. Almost had it there.
Rest in peace, Stanley.
My family tried to trick me into celebrating Christmas.
You know, we are meditating.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. I was only about to achieve enlightenment, but who'd want that?
Who likes short shorts?
I like short shorts.
Those guys are way off.